The balance breakdown is back, everybody. O'Neill, Harry Powell in your eardrums, on your eyeballs, forever, or whatever you're taking in this content with. Harry, how are you doing? We're here, obviously, to take a look at a day late. I must say, apologies, it's my fault. I was playing in a soccer tournament this past weekend and needed a few drinks, if I'm being honest, after the tournament, and a little bit extra time to recover as well, because I'm an old bastard. We're here, better late than never. UFC Vegas 93 in the Apex this past weekend. Leon Murphy, Edson Barboza was your main event. We'll take you through that main event and the rest of the card as well. We'll keep it snappy. A weird card overall. A few things to talk about, of course. Obviously, we get into the main event. But Harry, you said it was a weird card. It was a weird card overall, but a couple of talking points that we can take from it too at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know exactly. As I shred my my earphones out here, I'm not sure exactly why I got like the feeling that it was a weird card. I think sometimes we just get nights like that where there's something in the atmosphere. It happens for the positive as well a lot of the time, where you just sort of get a sense that this is going to be a good fight card and a good night of fights, and then it turns out to be a fantastic one. But I don't know. I don't know what happened. It felt a little flat. It felt like there were just just an odd feeling in the room. And I mean, obviously I wasn't there, so I can't speak to that too strongly, but just when you watch the event, you kind of get a sense for how the room is feeling. And to me anyway, it just felt like a bit of a strange evening in the Apex. Now, of course, there were some strange finishes, the headbutt, the knockout with a strike to the chest. We had some strange fight IQ going on. But all around, I think it was definitely saved by the main event, which was a fantastic performance, frankly, from both men in their own regard, and we'll obviously get to that. But I think that the main event certainly saved the evening in what was a fantastic fight. But overall, just a bit of a strange card.
And that's the way we were kind of looking at it even before the card happened as well. It was like, not really right too much to write home about in terms of name value, jeopardy, or anything else on the entire card. But, we were looking with curiosity at how Leon Murphy would tackle the biggest test of his career, going in against Edson Barboza. And in my opinion, I think he passed with flying colors. I thought he put on a tremendous showing against, an old but still difficult competitor in Edson Barboza, and one that can cause a lot of problems. And he tried ever so hard to cause those problems against Leon Murphy, but Murphy just kind of walked him down and walked through everything. And and I think I said it to you, the biggest thought that was creeping through my head when I was watching this fight, it was like, Leon Murphy is prepared to die in that cage to pick up wins or go out there and perform well. And the way he performed there, I think, really showcased that. Now, look, after everything that he's been through and the stories that have come out, he's been shot, he's been in a really bad accident not so long ago. He's shown that fighting spirit outside the octagon. He's shown it inside the octagon too, but I think Edson Barboza really brought him to that next level where, we talked about durability and willingness to take shots, to give shots. And I thought we saw that more than ever from Leon Murphy against Edson Barboza, on top of some great skills, on top of some great game planning, and an overall accumulation of just a great performance, in my opinion. He'll need to be better, but I think on the night, given everything that he's been through, it's been a while since we've seen him in there. I think he passed this test with flying colors, Harry. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think you mentioned, and you summed it up really well, old but still dangerous for Edson Barboza. And he was dangerous. He was dangerous throughout the fight. And I think that's why I give Edson, and I will call it a great performance for Edson. I think for Edson, at the age he is right now, at the stage he is in his career, it was a great performance. He landed on Leon Murphy. He hurt Leon Murphy. He took the left leg away from Leon Murphy as the fight drew on and forced a really impressive adjustment from Leon Murphy. And he took so many shots, so many monster shots, elbows inside, knees to the head kicks, straight shots, overhand rights. There was just, Lerone Murphy hit Edson Barboza with absolutely everything in his arsenal, and Edson wouldn't go away, refused to go away.
And I think that's a testament to Barboza as well, because I think, well, look at a testament to two in rounds one. I mean, Murphy was pretty dominant, having his own way, took that up kick, which hurt him. I think he showed a bit of character to come back and be as dominant as he was in round two.
Mhm.
And I think Edson Barboza kind of showed that bit of character to come back after being dominated in round two as well. So it was just like these two guys are just trying to out tough each other throughout this fight.
And I think the thing that was so impressive to me for Edson specifically is that he dragged that extra level out of Lerone, which is Lerone Murphy is battering Edson Barboza in that second and portions of that third round. And Edson says, we can keep doing this. Right? Like, I'm not going anywhere. All these takedowns that you try and bring my hands down or change the range, it's fine. I'm just going to keep getting back up. You think that I'm going to wilt, and I'm not. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to be in your face for this entire 25 minutes. And yeah, okay, I'm probably going to lose this, right? But I'm really going to make you work for it. And I'm really going to show you what the toughness really can look like of an elite competitor, or maybe an ex-elite competitor, in Edson Barboza. And Lerone Murphy will take so much from that fight, because up until now, if you put him in there with somebody of lesser caliber than Edson Barboza, he gets it done inside those 5 rounds. After that second round, fighters will wilt, fighters will fade away, but fighters aren't Edson Barboza. And so I think it is so critical for Lerone Murphy. And this is the reason why we do these veteran tests, right? Is
100%.
that there are elements of the game that you can't teach and you only get via experience. And Edson Barboza has buckets of experience, and he poured a little bit of that experience out onto the canvas on Saturday night, and Lerone mopped it up with real great ability.
If there was a couple of key points or key moments in the fight that, helped Lerone Murphy get the job done, in your opinion, Harry, what were those?
So I think there's probably 5. The first is he made an MMA fight, and
We talked about that too in the setup last week. Is like, there was 2 ways of kind of tackling that fight. You could stand and bang and try and prove you're a better striker than Edson Barboza, but I think the latter, and what you said was, well, you thought he was going to make it an MMA fight, and he did, and it was a wise choice in the long run.
Agreed. He entered the clinch. There was some cage wrestling. There was some actual wrestling. There was a bit of groundwork. There was a bit of jiu-jitsu. There was a bit of everything. And obviously, predominantly striking. That's what Lerone Murphy wants to do. That's fine. I got no problem with that. But regardless of whether Edson refused the takedowns, whether Edson got back up, he eventually had to continue to think about those takedowns. And so I think that was the first one. The second one was Lerone made a read very early. And that read was when he was in an orthodox stance. If he hung his head at an angle slightly off the center line, but it made it look like it was available for a left hook, Edson was biting on that shot quite a lot. And Lerone was finding that he was circling off and was able to come over the top with that big overhand right early. Lerone did a good job of lifting the front leg and making Edson miss with that lead low kick and coming straight down the pipe with either.
Yeah, I was going to say was that his immediate response to those kicks were to come straight at him with his boxing, and it was something that quite worked and made Edson hesitant to throw that, because he was landing that straight right down the pipe with such ferocity straight after that. And that's what you got to do there. That's what I meant by being willing to take some punishment, to dish some punishment. So, obviously no one really wants to, and the plan was not to go out there and take an abundance of leg kicks, but you're not going to go into a fight with Edson Barboza without getting leg kicked. I just don't think that's going to happen unless you knock him out really early. So I was really impressed with the way Murphy kind of counteracted that as well at the same time.
Agreed. And then I think that the last 2 are, he just fought from everywhere. right? Whether they were on the ground, whether they were in a clinch situation, there was knees, there was elbows, there was different ranges, there were high kicks, there were low kicks, there were stomp kicks, there was body kicks, there were body shots, he just hit him everywhere and with everything. And then the last one was adjustments. So we mentioned at the very start, end of round one, he gets caught with an up kick, takes him a little bit of time to bring himself together and drag himself back to the corner. Comes out, smashes Edson in round two. Says, cool, you want to do intensity? We can do intensity, big man. I've got you. Then I think it was either the end of the third or the start of the fourth. Edson throws a spinning sidekick that lands on Larone's ankle and drops the left ankle. Lerone immediately drops into takedowns, ends up in front headlock, recovers from front headlock, gets back up and immediately switches to southpaw. It must have been round three. In round four, he spent a significant amount of time in southpaw and did a good job then of making adjustments and finding his left hand. I thought that was absolutely fantastic to see Lerone put through. Sorry, the fifth is Lerone was damaged too. That nose is severely broken and was broken early. And you saw his whole face puffed up, his forehead puffed up, and that's, something's broken in there. And for him to be able to continue to push the pace, continue to opt for power shots. And so those two, that 4 and 5th point, maybe we can congeal them together. But the adjustments and the ability to fight through the damage, the ability to land damage on top of damage it was so impressive, because Edson is not a guy you want to be taking too much damage from.
Absolutely not. No, great performance. Not enough to get him inside the top 10. Announced at number 11 in the rankings today, 145-pound division. Doesn't really matter in terms of what's next for him. I think there's going to be a big opportunity for him. 2 questions. Who would you like to see him fight next? And will it be too soon for him to be on that Manchester card, given the nature of how the fight played out?
I mean, he said in the post-fight press conference he was going to go and sit in an ice bath for 2 weeks and see if he could. He
was in that hyperbaric chamber today. I saw on Instagram as well. So he's trying his best, I think, to recover as quickly as he can.
For sure, and I think he won't get a big name inside 6 weeks or whatever it is before that card. But I think with Lerone Murphy's age, the fight's already booked. This fight is already booked, but the fight I really want to see him in is Dan Ige. I think that's the fight, right?
Yeah.
The next test is Dan Ige is obviously a veteran in 145 pounds, but he hits massive. He can wrestle, he can strike, etc., etc. I wouldn't mind seeing Andre Fili. I know that's a back step, but I wouldn't mind seeing the Andre Fili fight. I think Lerone Murphy wins that pretty handily, but I would like to see
the type of fight that they might put him in there against in 3 or 4 if he wants to be on the card, So
right. This is kind of my point. So
yeah.
If we're thinking, if I was to put 2 together, the fight I really want is probably a Dan Ige. I think that would be fantastic. If that doesn't happen and he does want to fight on Manchester, it's going to be a short notice style of an opponent, and you're not going to get Dan Ige for that one. He's already booked. And 2, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't know whether this is too far at the rankings or whatever, but what about the Korean Zombie?
He's retired, I thought.
Is he actually, though? That's my question.
Yeah, well, he's #MMA retired, but
if he fancies coming back,
yeah,
I wouldn't mind that fight.
I don't know if you fancy too much coming back against a guy like Lerone Murphy. Jesus, well, you never know. We never know. I hope the Korean Zombie stays retired.
Me too.
You don't need to be taking any, but that's no. I understand the nature of you matching the 2 of those up. It's a good name. It's a good guy to kind of get you right up into the title mix, because we got to get a move in here with Lerone Murphy. Obviously, he's been out of the cage and has had some stuff happen, and with injuries and everything like that, he's got to get a move on here, and the next year is going to be absolutely massive to see if he's going to be able to get himself into title contention. So, any final thoughts before we move on?
One final name, and again, this is not what we need to see is a heavy wrestler, right? But what you could do is, if you wanted to vault him into something a little bit more spicy, let's do Calvin Kattar.
Yeah, that's actually a very good one. And if I might add as well, I know we got a fight between Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze there. Like, I mean, if one thing happens to one of the other guys, I know Giga Chikadze has been kind of unlucky with injuries ahead of fights as well. If something happens to one of those guys, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity too. I think he's going to be the best thing that he can do is stay ready for that 304 card anyway, one way or another, whether he got matched or not. But be interesting to see what happens with Barboza. Obviously a disappointing one for him. It wasn't a performance that would even make you close to saying that he should be hanging it up or anything like that. I thought he was ultra competitive against an underrated guy in Leron Murphy, a guy who just doesn't get as much credit as he should, and how good that he is, because we just haven't seen him that much. Who do we stick Barboza in there with next, Harry? Any ideas?
We got to be careful.
Yeah, we do definitely have to be careful now at this stage.
Yeah, I don't want to see Barboza in too many of these. He's a veteran. Let's chuck him in against a savage. Blah 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 blah. I don't really want to see that. I wouldn't mind just seeing him in some fun fights now.
Do you know what I said? Move up to lightweight and take on someone like Kevin Lee or something like that. He's a guy that he's fought already. The last time that he fought Kevin Lee way back in 2018, and it was a doctor stoppage due to a cut. So, I mean, that's a fight.
Jim Miller at some Barboza? Is that too much of a stretch?
Oh God, poor Jim, man. He got broke up badly against Bobby Green. I don't like to see that for Jim Miller.
Barboza, Paddy Pimblett after Paddy Pimblett loses at 304.
God. No, I don't know about that either. Well, I mean, Paddy could take him down, but yeah. Well, I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. If we're being careful, those are good, careful fights for Edson Barboza. Maybe not for the guys that were putting them in there with. But we never know. We'll never know. Interesting times. But yeah. Look at the Edson is looking. Look, he looks trim. He looks fit and looks sharp at featherweight too. So maybe the move up is not going to be anywhere that he wants to be, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. We move on to the co-main event, Harry. A fight that was not great. It did exactly what it said it was going to do on the tin, to be honest. These two guys hit hard, they throw wildly, and they're very defensively open, and it lasted 96 seconds with Chaos Williams getting the right hook and getting the finish after almost being finished himself, to be honest. Not too much to write home about on this one at all. Just two big bruisers going in there throwing leather, and one of them got clipped.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It just wasn't great. Chaos Williams just wanted to throw big hammers, and he threw one slightly bigger hammer than Harris did, and here we are. That's literally it. There's really not much technical analysis other than they both went out. They knew the assignment, and the assignment was throw big shots until somebody falls over, and it was Carlston Harris that ended up falling over. I don't think it puts Chaos Williams really any further up the division, for me anyway.
No, not for me either.
Than he was previously. He's exactly what he is says on the tin. He hits hard, and if he catches you, he will put you to sleep. But if not, he's a relatively limited fighter, and so yeah, that's about it, really.
Who do you want to see him in there with?
I don't care.
Yeah, not too much either. Yeah, I would say, look, we're moving on to the next one. You could put him in there with Temba Gorimbo. Temba Gorimbo picked up a unanimous decision win over Ramiz Brahimaj. Not a great performance from him either, let's be real with that. Obviously dealt with a big tragedy ahead of the fight. During his pre-fight scrum with the media, he announced that his coach had lost his mother a couple of hours before that. Very visibly emotional, carried a lot on his shoulders heading into that fight as well. Very emotional after the fight too, of course. He said it affected his performance. You could see how it would affect someone's performance. But it wasn't a very exciting performance. He didn't really stretch himself too much, completely dominant in the grappling department, but without landing too much damage to kind of make this like a landslide victory, but definitely deserved a unanimous decision. More of a frustrating win for Gorimbo and a frustrating loss for Brahimaj as well, really, wouldn't it, Harry?
Yeah, I mean, the way I looked at this fight, especially coming in, was he just needed to win. I think with Gorimbo, there is a unfair there's an unfair attention on him because of the Rock and the house and the everything else stuff. Like, you know, he has to say when he gets in that cage and sorry, when he gets in those interviews and he's talking to him like, oh, I'm going to pay you back by becoming a champion. He's not he's not going to become a champion. He's not good enough. And there's not enough time in his career left for him to really start to put that together to challenge at the elite level. You could definitely see him having a number next to his name at some point in his career, potentially. But, you know, if he makes it between 15 and 10, he's done excellently well in his career. And I really, you know, we shouldn't be talking about him being a title prospect for
pretty much. I think he'd be lucky to make it into the rankings. He's 33 years of age right now. He's got
me too. But that's what I mean. If he makes 15 to 10, he's done unbelievably well. Like
100%.
He's excelled. Yeah. And I think for him, for the next little while he is like from what seems like a incredibly dramatic story in his life, not just in this fight week, but just generally to get to where he is right now, it feels as though now that blessing from the Rock has allowed him to settle a little bit. And so he can start doing things like acquiring skills and building a life that is settled, and there's patterns and there's this and there's that. And so we might see that over the next little while, the skill acquisition starts to rise and the performances start to rise equally. But for now, just win. And that's what he did. Like, he early, within the first 15 to 20 seconds, initiated a clinch, realized he was better there and stuck with it. And honestly, I can't argue with that. I really can't. Like, if you're getting in there, you're third in the main, like third from the top on a main card. Okay, not a huge card, but there is always going to be spotlight on you whilst you're going and fixing whatever it is. And if your mind is not in the right place to go fight, just win. And he won. And so I'm not going to be too hard on him for the performance. He's going to need to be better. Don't get me wrong. He's going to need to be better, but fair play to him. He managed to pull it out.
Yeah, you just got to put him in there with a guy that's going to be able to, you know, defend that grapple heavy approach from him and kind of force him to maybe resort to a plan B or a plan C as well. And that's where you might see what kind of a fighter he is maybe overall. But I do agree with your overall assessment with not really too much analytically to break down as well. He just pressured him, pushed him against the cage, groaned on Brahimaj, and you know, it was just like I said, frustrating win for Gorimbo, frustrating loss, I'm sure, for Brahimaj. And we will move on to the next one. Adrian Yanez, Vinicius Salvador. Interesting stylistic kind of striking battle here before the finish came, but you know, Yanez kind of went in there, I think, with a similar kind of a mentality that Chaos Williams did, in that he knew that he had the power advantage here. He knew that he was technically better, and he was just lining up punches to get that guy out of there. And he finally found the mark with 2 minutes and 47 seconds left into round one. And Salvador was knocked out with a right hook and followed up with some ground strikes from Yanez. The ref stepped in. A good win. I think Yanez is going to have to be a hell of a lot better, though, to be honest. I'm kind of cooling the jets on my opinion of Yanez. I was very, very high on Yanez. Obviously, look, you can go and you can lose to Dan Ige. I don't know whether there was an over willingness to want to prove himself that he belongs and he is that good by maybe forcing the action a little bit too much against Salvador here, Harry, because I thought if he was a little bit more patient, a little bit more smooth, because he did put himself into some situations there where he was getting hit here, and he won't be able to do that against better level competition. I'm curious to hear what your overall assessment was on Yanez and his win.
I have two opinions that are slightly polar opposite, but I'm going to try and get them together, right? I thought this was one, a mismatch, and two, horrible fight IQ by Yanez. Horrible. Like, he was so much better than Salvador and knew it. But that cocky, arrogant, whatever, made this a closer fight than it needed to be. I thought he allowed Salvador into the fight. It was clear that Salvador didn't have the same power, and I thought you summed it up really, really nicely, that Yanez just sort of allowed him to be in the fight just so he could bang him whenever he wanted to.
Yeah, he fought down to his level, like, and said that. I think he maybe just had a willingness to let Salvador inside more than maybe his coaches, or maybe more than he would have probably game planned for. because maybe he felt his power early on, didn't have any confidence that Salvador was going to get him out of there. But I thought it was like it was the least technical I've seen his boxing inside the octagon, if I'm being honest, which was like very strange for me to look at. But it was all for the result that came. I mean, it's hard to be as critical about it when the finish comes, when the finish does come. But like I said, I think you should be fighting these guys the way you should be thinking of this guy as being a world champion and going in there and fighting this guy rather than fighting down to his level, where on another day, you could get clipped there and you could be facing 2 losses in a row. Like, that's how mixed martial arts works sometimes. It's so unpredictable. And when you do take those kind of chances, you're putting yourself at more of a risk in there against a guy that you should be beating relatively easy.
I completely agree. And if the idea was, oh, I'm gonna really show my level here, and you didn't. You beat a fella that you should have absolutely pasted, and you did so without showing me any technical proficiency or any difference in your game. Like, he leg kicked well, and he threw big left hands well, and he clipped him with an overhand right and put him to sleep. I have to say also, I hated the stoppage here. Like, Salvador was out and poorly defending, not intelligently defending himself for significant portions of that ground and pound. And I did not like how long it took for the stoppage to come. But Yanez, I don't know. It's tough for Yanez. I mean, do we do Lerone Murphy, Yanez?
That's a tough one for Yanez, I think.
Sure it is, but like, Yanez has been in and around those rankings far longer than Lerone Murphy has, and Yanez didn't take too much damage. Could turn around for London if they wanted to make that. I don't think that's out of the realms of. I wouldn't book it if I was Yanez. I'd say, yeah, I really hurt my hands banging that fella, and I'm gonna sit this one out, Chief. Thanks, but
yeah.
I don't know. I came away from that Yanez fight being largely underwhelmed.
Yeah, I wanted to be excited after the performance from him because it was a good chance for him to come back after that loss, obviously. But I was like left wondering, like, what went wrong there? There's something going on mentality wise, I think, with Yanez, and that can happen after you get finished for the first time. And if he was in fact finished for the first time, I just kind of threw that out there. He probably was finished before that, but like, he got knocked out against Danny again. Rob Font, excuse me. Man, I'm getting everything all kind of jazzed up. And then obviously the loss to Jonathan Martinez. So, coming back off 2 losses, that can kind of mess with you mentally. But look, he got the job done. He'll be moving on. He's going to have to be better in future. Someone who really, really impressed me on the night, though, I got to say, was Angie Hill. She was unbelievable against Liana Pinheiro. Pinheiro obviously brought in here as this young, hungry up-and-comer in the division. And Angie Hill just went out there and I have to say, put on her best performance I even remember from her for a long time. A well-rounded performance, smooth on the feet, smooth in the grappling exchanges, and got her well-deserved finish in round 2 with a mounted guillotine choke as well. Excellent finish. Talk me through that performance and the actual finish itself, Harry.
So, first submission win in Angela Hill's UFC career. That is insane. We're talking 30 fights in the UFC. 30 fights, and this is her first submission win. I think what that does do, right, is that really, really shows us the amount of skill acquisition that Angie has put into her camps in the last little while. She is training with Jenna Bishop, who has now rolled over to MMA, but long-time Jenna Bishop training partner. She's been training with Justin Flores, who is a very, very, very good grappler in his own right. And she came out and just schooled Pinheiro here. Absolutely schooled her. We know and have seen that Angie has, on her day, some good footwork. She moves well. Her head moves well. She's obviously very, very comfortable with her Thai boxing style. It was always just the other elements that sort of needed fitting in. And there was obviously some power problems, and there was some problems sitting down on her punches and all these sorts of things that we hadn't quite seen sort of the breadth of Angie for. But she came out here and just just danced around Pinheiro and stuck shots in her face and landed to the body and landed well to the head and circled well and really mixed in some beautiful trips. And when she was on the ground, she wasn't rushing anything, and it was just, she was catching Pinheiro whenever she wanted, and she was drowning her in some of those exchanges. And it was just a pleasure to watch Angie perform in a way that she would be proud of, like
you could see how much it meant to her after the fight as well. Like, it was great to see.
Right. And that's a performance that she really has deserved for the time that she has put into the game. And so, yeah, I was really happy with it. Now, the finish itself, she's clearly been watching some old Marcelo DVDs. Fair play to her. She found a guillotine when Pinheiro shot the first time in that second after catching the front kick to the face. And she didn't quite set it up as she wanted to. And very smartly, she didn't dive for it. Right. She tried to search for the arm in, didn't quite get to the grip that she wanted, didn't quite get to the gooseneck type grip that she was looking for, and so moved on. And that was perfect. The second time, however, when she wrapped the front headlock, Pinheiro did a poorer job of closing her shoulder, closing the gap to her shoulder. And so Angie went with what we call a gooseneck type grip, which is really easy in MMA gloves, but more difficult in regular grappling, where a gooseneck obviously goes up and then it curls at the top, right? And so Angie was doing the same thing, where she was wrapping her glove into the neck, and then she was using a reinforced hand. It's called like a butter choke, and that's something that Marcelo made very, very famous. And she just dropped immediately in, rolled Pinheiro through to mount, and we're finished. Like, the only difference between a mounted guillotine and a regular guillotine is in a mounted guillotine, you're going to roll your shoulders back to get extension in the neck, whereas regularly in a normal guillotine, you're just side crunching to get the
that arch is important as well when you are driving the hips down to the mat when you're in top, to kind of just to force that choke on a little bit more. Would I be correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And she nailed it. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I was made up for her, to be honest. Really,
yeah, it was a feel good moment on the card for sure. And whatever's next for her, she may crack the top 10 there now. So fair play to her. She's got some big fights on the way. Any quick names that we want to throw out?
I don't know, to be honest. Like, I also, with Angie 30 fights deep at this point in the UFC alone, like, what do we want to do now? You know what I mean? Like, do we want to say, yeah, I want to crack at pushing for a title? Do I want to just have some fun fights? I don't know what she wants to do. And so I didn't listen to her. I didn't listen to her post-fight press conference. So I'm not exactly sure on the answer she would have given. But yeah, I don't have names specifically right now. No.
Yep, that's totally fine. Moving on to your guy, Tom Nolan, who was the focus of the Severe Spotlight this week, Harry. Came back from some adversity, but landed such an unusual knockout. I was like, when this first happened, I was like, what was it there? What was it, to the solar plexus? But he landed that knee perfectly to the liver and absolutely shut down Victor Martinez. 3 minutes 50 into round one. A wonderful, wonderful knee to the body and a wonderful knockout. And, that amongst a couple of other things, you were high on Tom, didn't perform obviously in his first UFC fight, came in and said, look, he was a lot more composed in there and needed to be, and especially a lot more composed when he got hurt. I think, the fact that he tried to rush and maybe panicked a little bit in his first UFC fight kind of cost him over ultimately getting finished overall in that fight. Not this time though. Excellent performance. And maybe if you want to highlight some of the reasons why you chose to shine this fair spotlight on him this week.
Sure. So I think for Tom Nolan, right, what sort of shone through to me was, I don't really count people's debuts too much, right? Like, not too much, because stuff happens. You know what I mean? Like, stuff happens. But their second fight, the next fight in, that's really where we are looking at who are they as a fighter. And Tom Nolan, I think, really found out the UFC level in this one. Victor Martinez, decent fighter, but certainly not a world beater. And Tom Nolan came in and threw a ton of different strikes, a ton of offering, a ton of really, really, really lovely things. and then fell in love with some of them. The spinning back fist is what got him caught in the first place, off the reset, and Victor Martinez did a good job staying in his face, land the right hand. But it was when Nolan dropped to the ground, he composed himself, he put himself in a good close guard, built himself back up, and the immediacy with which he said, okay, I have to take this seriously now. I'm not going to fuck around. I'm going to look for my shot, and I'm going to land my shot. And as Victor Martinez came in, mistakenly looking for exactly the same shot himself, Tom Nolan said, cool, how about I break 3 of your ribs? And launched a knee from absolute hell. And if you watch it, it's perfect. It comes right up the middle and he turns it in at the last moment. And it's
completely meant for that. Like completely meant for that. Absolute devastation when a shot like that, and especially when you got Martinez, who's kind of coming in, which is adding the ferocity to it as well. Excellently timed and meant with the level of devastation that it was thrown. It was serious knee.
100%. And I'm interested to see who Tom Nolan's going to be in the UFC. I'm certainly not, he's not going to win a title, right? I don't think we're looking at somebody of that ilk, but he is somebody that's fun. He's somebody that has an interesting game. He has willingness to throw a ton of different dexterous techniques. And that tells us something, right? That tells us something of his confidence. That tells us something of who he is as a person. And that's something that we can be on board with, right? Like I said,
100%.
not everyone
24 years of age, Harry. I mean, he does have a lot of time to grow and build as well. But, we've talked time and time again, those opportunities don't always come your way when you're fighting in the UFC, where you're fighting high level competition almost all the time. Opportunities to grow and find your ceiling and gain experience. You could find yourself on a 2 or 3 fight losing streak and out the door quickly before then you get yourself into the rankings there, especially when you're fighting in the lightweight division as well. It's not easy to be able to achieve, but there's a couple of fun fights for him out there for sure in lightweight.
For sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, there definitely is, right? And I certainly don't think that we should write him off or anything silly like that. I just think that 24 or not, 24 at this point, right, is the age that in the UFC, sort of the age of, it's similar to football in that in football, if you're not world class by 19, people are saying, "Oh, what are we doing? Like he's taking too long, or he's taking this, or he's taking that." I think in MMA, the age with which we are expecting a peak is dropping dramatically, and so
yeah, I definitely think more so in modern mixed martial arts. I think there has been a couple of guys who were shaky as they were young and maybe kind of came on a little bit stronger. I think the prime example of that would be Charles Oliveira, but like I said, we're in a more modern day of mixed martial arts now, where we're seeing a lot of fighters coming in already well-rounded into the UFC as well. And I don't think we could say that about Tom Nolan. I don't think that well-roundedness is there for him yet. He's going to need stylistically favorable matchups in order for him to kind of grow as a fighter and to grow into the division as well. And it's going to be up to the matchmakers on whether they decide to do that for him or not, to be honest, really, isn't it?
100%. Because what I was going to finish with just there was like, there's only a few fights that you get in the UFC that are even, you are going to be fighting really, really good competition all of the time, very quickly in the UFC, especially at 155 pounds. And so the UFC obviously debut gets a notch down. From here, we're going to find out who he is, and we're going to find out who he is quickly. And so let's find out,
Let's absolutely find out. I tell you what, we found out who Umar Sy was at the weekend, and impressive performance over Tokkos. In the 205-pound division, wrapping up a rear naked choke in the first round to move to 10-0, and a prospect that we can be watching here, Harry.
Definitely. I mean, really short notice fight. 205, so quality's not all, it's not amazing. But Omar Sy went out and just ran over Tokkos, just absolutely ran over him. I would like to see him back quickly. I would like to see him pushed. I would like to see him as often as we can, try and round him out. Again, interested to see what the level is. Obviously a really good athlete, obviously hits hard, obviously got a bit of the grappling in there. I'm just as always, when you go out and you perform like that on your debut, I am hesitant to chuck all of the flowers at your feet. I need to see just if we have 2 or 3 performances like that, okay, all right, I see you. Let's have some conversations. But until then, book him quickly. I think really impressive performance.
Previous wins over a UFC quality fighter in Luis Enrique da Silva in KSW, but da Silva, who finished 2-4 in the UFC, no longer there. But the guy that had fought there too. But we saw his level of quality, I think. But yeah, there'll be bigger tests. I'd like to see him pushed as well. But it'd be a welcome addition into the light heavyweight division. And as UFC debuts go, Harry, it was quite impressive. Any names?
Ooh. What do we want to do with him? Like, is Gerald Meerschaert too far? If Meerschaert doesn't want to kick around at 185 pounds anymore,
I like 28. He's 28 now, so we're probably not gonna want to be kind of feeding him winnable fights for too long. But maybe a different stylistic matchup. Maybe
that's kind of my point. Is Gerald Meerschaert a winnable fight? I don't know if it is.
Let's see.
Could we do Philippe Lins?
Yeah, that's another one. Although Philippe is after has moved up quite a bit. I think he's probably going to be like, I would say two more fights for him this year, right? Try get 2 more fights this year and then give him a Philippe Lins next year or something like that as a veteran test.
I've got it. The answer is Ion Cutelaba.
There you go. The Hulk. That is the ultimate litmus test of how good that you are at 205 in the UFC. Yeah, I like it. Moving on to the next one. We'll have to tread carefully around this one, I think. Melissa Gatto, Tamaris Vidal, a body punch. It's here, and I think that's the safest thing. I think we'll stick to that, Harry. An unusual finish. To say the least. We can't really say too much about it. The way the fight was shaping up, look at Gatto was head and shoulders above Vidal. It was clear from the very start of the fight that she was the much better fighter. She was the much bigger fighter. There was a serious gap in quality. And, Vidal took that punch and chose not to continue. So you can't really kind of critique her for I really don't know how to talk about this, to tell you the truth. I ain't gonna lie. But
wasn't a very well matched fight.
No, it was a complete mismatch, to be honest. And I don't know what it look, let's stop beating around the bush here. I don't know what it's like to get hit in the breast. I don't know how sore it is. I do know that that is a sensitive area for a lot of women too. So I'm not going to critique or anything like that, but would I be lying to say that Tamaris Vidal was looking for a way out? It kind of seemed that way, the way the fight was kind of materializing. Would it be unfair for me to say that, Harry, in your opinion? Or
I mean, I don't know. I find it very difficult to say something like that until until it is plainly obvious. I think it's tough to say things like that. However, for Vidal, I mean, what I will say is I don't think it is uncommon for women to take shots in that area, right? Like, I think it happens a lot to men, and I suspect, you throw a shot and it lands where it lands. You know what I mean?
Well, sometimes you're like, and especially when you're in mixed martial arts, you're trained to throw shots at that level. They say you should be throwing in the chest area in times where people may be looking to level change and stuff like that as well, or to kind of maybe counteract head movement as well. But yeah, look, it was a mismatch before that, and it was kind of a strange one. And you say it's not uncommon. It's definitely a common thing that we do see happen. But this being the first ever time a fight was stopped for that reason, but kind of tells its own story as well at the same time.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, what I will say, I won't necessarily say that she's looking for a way out. What I will say is, I think getting struck like that is pretty common in mixed martial arts, and so I was shocked to see Vidal sort of veer away in the level of pain that she was in. And that's obviously never nice to see. Maybe there was a recurring injury there. Maybe there's something that we don't know about there. But yeah, strange fight altogether in that Vidal was never really in the fight. And then when Gatto threw that shot, it didn't look like a shot that had a huge amount of power behind it either. And then obviously the result was what it was. But look, fair play to Melissa Gatto. At the end of the day, she's got to go out there and win, and that's what she did. I don't think we can really say too much outside of that.
100%. Last one that we'll probably spend a prolonged period of time on. Abus Magomedov, Warley Alves. Look, at good solid performance. Warley Alves is a tough guy. Yeah, it wasn't anything really to write home about, perhaps, but it was a good solid performance from Abus Magomedov. A kind of little good bit of a downturn, having faced some good level opposition in Sean Strickland and that in for in the early stages of his UFC career. He was coming in off of the back of 2 losses, obviously Cowbahalio in his last fight. So an important win over a tough Warley Alves for Abus Magomedov.
Definitely. And I mean, he's had a weird career, hasn't he? Sorry, I know that's nothing to do with the fight, but he's had such a strange UFC career. Comes in, really quick knockout, and then they're like, would you like to fight for a title, sir? And he's like, yeah, all right, no stress. And then you go from there to Kaya Bahayo, who, I mean, everyone knows my opinion on Kaya Bahayo, but it was a massively important win because regardless of who you fought in the UFC, it's not like Abus Magomedov had a huge amount of credit in the UFC. He didn't have, we see with fighters all the time, they may lose 3 in a bounce, but they may be 3 short notice fights against upper weight or down weight or this or that, or then they've saved cards here or and the UFC will give them a pass, right? If you are put into a title shot and you get beat up as badly as he did against Sean Strickland, and then you get fed to Kaya Bahayo and you lose as badly as you did there, and you then go to Warley Alves and you lose there, there's no credit for you. And so it was a really, really important win for him. And he looked absolutely ginormous in there.
I was going to say it. Massive change in his physique from his last fight to this fight. It was the first thing that I noticed in there as well.
Yeah, so obviously he's invested in a strength and conditioning coach. Fair play to him. That's obviously an important part of being a professional fighter. And I look with Warley Alves specifically. I still think he is a tough out, right? Like I still think he's no slouch, he's no pushover, but he's not the Warley Alves that we saw against Gunny Nelson and these sorts of people. He's just not that level anymore. And that was probably 8 years ago, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And 8 years is a long time in professional mixed martial arts. It's a long, long time. But yeah, an important win for Abus Magomedov altogether.
Indeed. Anyone, did you like to see him in there next? I think,
we've Craig.
Ooh, there you go. Nice one. Had that right at the tip of your tongue there. So what we'll do now is we will go and I'll run through the results of the last 3 fights, and I'll get your quick thoughts on how you thought those fights were going to play out, and or if they played out to your imagination. Ariane Carnellosi picked up a disqualification win. Pera Rodriguez dominating the fight. Very silly dip down in headbutted Carnellosi, was disqualified twice. Yeah, rightly so. I think all of the officials got this exactly right. She was warned once, did it again. Alatang Haley picked up a unanimous decision win over Cledson Rodriguez. I was looking at Rodriguez as maybe the favorite going in there. Did well. Not a great fight overall. Same could be said about Vanessa Demapolius, who won a split decision over Emily Ducoit. Out of those 3 fights, any quick thoughts on any of the 3 wins?
If Emily Ducoit threw a right hand behind a jab, she'd have won that fight. Alatang Haley just realized that Rodriguez, although he trains with Charles Oliveira, isn't Charles Oliveira, and so just took him down and ragdolled him. And the other fight was... What was the other fight?
Carnellosi.
absolutely horrendous fight IQ. Just egregious stuff, like absolutely egregious. The first one, she even tried to hide it, right, by going behind the shoulder and then dropping the head. And sometimes I get it, right, when you're in close guard and your opponent is pulling their knees towards their chest, you can sometimes slip if they have overhooks, you haven't quite got the base, and your head falls forward, and it's a bit whatever. But that wasn't the case. Like, her posture was already
I
broken.
don't know I don't know why you make decisions to do that. Like, I understand why there's some level of frustration there, or just maybe a moment of madness. But normally those levels of frustration comes if a fight isn't going your way.
She was
But
winning handy.
she was winning easily, and oh my goodness, she's going to be so angry when she looks back at that, and just a moment of madness there, and
Just just insane.
yes, strange decision making there from Pinheiro Rodriguez. And that wraps us up for the balance breakdown this week. Severe Spotlight, Tom Nolan, SevereMMA.com. Head over there and check that out. Follow Harry at BJJ_Harry Powell at O'Neill MMA. We'll catch you next week. No UFC card to break down, but maybe we'll muster up something really quickly. We won't make any promises here now. We'll have a discussion, and if you see us, you see us. But we'll definitely be there to break down the massive 302 card that's humming up. Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. We'll be there. The big bad Shawnee should be joining us as well, and we'll catch you all maybe later on this week for the severe setup as well. We don't even know what we're going to talk about, but we'll muster up something too. Very, very unprepared, O'Neill and Harry Powell this week, but we always get the job done either which way. Good luck. God bless.